Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee. Our area of remit covers the previous Purbeck District Council and most of the previous East Dorset District Council areas. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Tony Coombs, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee. I'd like to introduce you to the officer team supporting us today. We have Mike Garrity, Head of Planning, Kim Cowell, Principal Planning Officer, Liz Adams, Planning Case Officer, Kevin Riley, Planning Case Officer, Andrew Douglas from the Tree Team, Chelsea Gollage, who will be reading out our public representations. Lara Autry is our legal support and David Northover is our Committee to Support Officer today. I would also like to thank all the officers behind the scenes who are making today's virtual meeting possible. So, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making processes to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and Council staff in accordance with the Government's guidance on social distancing by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. Full details of this are published in the agenda on page 5. Where a decision is required, committee members will express a minded to decision in respect of the recommendations set out in the officer reports, with decisions being taken under delegated authority. Mike Garrity, as the appropriate officer, is in attendance and will enact any minded to decision today. This meeting is being live streamed to the public and a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available on the website afterwards. Public participation will take the form of written statements and not public speaking, and we will follow the agenda as published. So, item 1, apologies for absence. David, do we have any apologies this morning?
Chairman, one apology from Councillor John Worth.
I believe we've also got Julie Robinson.
That might well be the case. I haven't seen that myself, but thank you. I will add that to the list of apologies. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. For the rest of the committee, I will go through the roll call, please. Shane Bartlett.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Mike Barron. Is Mike Barron with us this morning? Okay, I'll come back to Mike. Alex Brenton.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Good morning. Robin Cook.
Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Present.
Mike Dyer.
Morning, Chair.
Barry Gorringe.
Present, Madam Chairman.
David Morgan.
Morning, Madam Chairman.
Julie Robinson, we have apologies from. David Took.
Present, Madam Chairman.
Morning. Bill Trite. I know that Bill's having difficulties trying to connect to the meeting this morning, so hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly. And we have apologies from John Worth. So I'll just double check again. Mike Barron, are you available in the meeting? Okay. David, behind the scenes, given the difficulties we had yesterday, can you just double check that he will be attending this morning?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination by members of the committee. Does anyone have anything to say at this stage? If anything does become apparent during the meeting, please indicate via the chat box and we will register it at that point. Moving on to public participation. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations, which is limited to 450 words. And the maximum number of representations are 3 under each category and are accepted in strict date and time order. Members of Dorset Council who are not members of the committee and who wish to address the committee will be allowed to speak. All requests have to be registered by Democratic Services by 8:30 AM on Monday of this week. Are there any representations from the public that do not relate to matters on the agenda today?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. We have 3 applications before us today. Have there been any requests for deferrals or withdrawals, please?
Kim Cowell, Madam Chairman. No, there have been no requests for deferrals or withdrawals. Thank you.
Thank you. The background information relating to applications before us today has been made available for inspection by members prior to the meeting, covering consultations, objections and representations, as well as the East Dorset and Purbeck local plans and the Council's related policies. In each case, I will invite the case officer to introduce their item. Members of the public, planning agents, applicants, town and parish councils have all been invited to make written submissions, and these will be read out by Chelsea Gollage, who I have to say has not been involved with the merits of any of the applications, but only in providing technical support. They will be read out in the following order: public against, public in support, the applicant, agent, town and parish council, and then local member. Following the public participation section of every item, I will ask officers if there are any salient points that they wish to clarify. I will then open up to members for questions and debate. In order to run the meeting, may I request that members of the committee direct any remarks and questions through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Requests to speak need to be made via the chat facility. Can you please also keep your microphones on mute when you're not speaking to maintain audio quality? And the same for video, please. At the end of the debate on each item, I will take the vote by roll call. The vote will then be recorded in the minutes if 3 or more members make the necessary request. I will also ask members to confirm that they've heard the entire presentation and debate before they cast their vote. And can I also remind members that when we come to the vote, I don't need to have any explanation as to why you're voting in any particular way. I just need to know whether you are in favour or against the recommendation in front of you. So we will move on to the items for consideration this morning, and the first one is 320-2260 FUL to sever plot, demolish remaining part of existing dwelling and erect replacement dwelling at Smugglers Hide, 47 Brook Lane, Corfmullen, and that is on pages 7 to 26. So I'm going straight over to Kevin Riley as the case officer to give his presentation on this one.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members. I will just share my screen with you so you can see my presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Just while you're loading that, we have an update on Councillor Mike Barron. He's been lucky enough to get his booster jab today, so has sent his apologies.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hopefully yourself and members can now see my presentation on their screens.
We can indeed.
Excellent. Then I will begin. The application before you is to sever a plot, demolish the remaining part of the existing dwelling and to erect a replacement dwelling with carport and garden store at Smugglers Hide, 47 Brook Lane, Corfmullen. By way of an update, comments were received from Dorset Council Rights of Way after committee reports have been published. The Rights of Way officer offered no objection, but advised that throughout the duration of the development, the full width of the bridleway must remain open and available to the public. This application comes before members due to objections raised by Corfmullen Town Council. Their objections are based on the following concerns: dangerous access, unadopted lane unsuitable for additional traffic, density of development contrary to policy LN2, large size dwelling contrary to character of area and policy HE2, overdevelopment of plot, street scene misrepresentative, and neighbours would be overlooked. Your officer recommendation is for approval for the reasons set out in the committee report and this presentation. The application site is located in the western edge of Corfmullen, the Corfmullen urban area, along an unmade road that is semi-rural in character. The unmade section of Brook Lane in the vicinity of the site is characterised by detached dwellings relatively well spaced apart in a mixture of architectural styles. The site is formed from the southwest corner of the 47 Brook Lane plot. The following Google aerial views show the application site in the context of the surrounding development. Smuggler's Hide can be seen at the centre of this slide. The central section has been demolished following a fire. The site has been the subject of many previous planning applications to develop the site. Planning permission to develop the front of the site for 2 dwellings or for 1 large dwelling remain extant. The applicant has also submitted an alternative proposal for the south side of Smuggler's Hide and 2 alternative proposals for the north side of the site. These proposals are subject to an appeal against non-determination. These photographs show the street scene from the north and from the south of the site. This photograph shows Kester, the dwelling directly to the southwest of the site. The remaining part of Smuggler's Hide in this photograph can be seen just to the side of Kester. Highways have no objection to the proposed development leading off this unmade road, which would be similar in terms of Highways' impact to the approved dwelling for the site. Parking provision is considered to be satisfactory. This longer view shows the 2 dwellings to the southwest of the site. This slide shows the rear of Smuggler's Hide in its current state. Smuggler's Hide before the fire was a long linear building that filled much of the width of the plot. These are the side elevations of it. This is the site plan of the current proposal that is before the committee. The footprint of the existing dwelling can be seen superimposed over the proposed. The proposed elevations show a traditional, well-mannered design that relates well to the character and scale of the 2 dwellings to the southwest, with which it would form a visual grouping. Spacing between the proposed dwelling and neighbouring dwellings to the south is a generous 12 metres. Proposed floor and roof plans. Members will note that the plans show a basement. A neighbour has stated their concern that the construction of the basement may affect the structural integrity of their property. Advice from building control is that due to the 12-metre separation between the properties, the works for the basement should not affect the neighbouring property. Notwithstanding this point, building control also advised that the proper construction of the basement would be governed by building regulations. Properly constructed basement works can safely take place much closer to neighbouring boundaries than is proposed. Building regulations will also ensure that surface water runoff from the site is not increased by the proposal. In this proposed street scene, the scale of the development to the rear appears exaggerated in relation to the proposal, which is a cause of concern for the Town Council. However, this apparent misrepresentation is only because a scaled plan does not effectively show the effect of perspective. The plan is believed to be accurate in terms of the relative heights shown. The street scene serves to show that the proposal is generously spaced from the dwellings to the south. Approximately 12 metres would separate the proposal from its neighbours to the south. The density of development is well below the 30 dwellings per hectare recommended by policy LN2, but in the context of the site, this lower density is considered to be acceptable. In terms of overbearing and overlooking, the proposal compares favourably with the approved dwelling for the site. This aerial photograph gives a more real-world indication of how the proposal would sit within the surrounding development. The dwellings towards the bottom of the photo sit on higher ground relative to the site. For comparison, this slide shows the proposed site plan of the current application before committee. The next slide shows the site plan for the approved dwelling. Members will note that the approved dwelling presents a much longer side elevation to the neighbouring dwelling to the southwest than does the current proposal. Again, for comparison, this slide shows the elevations for the extant approval for the dwelling on the site. The side elevation of this proposal would appear much larger to occupants of Kester than the current proposal, which I will show again in the next slide. To add context, this slide shows the approved dwelling for the northern side of the plot. This dwelling would be set very close to the proposed dwelling that is the subject of this presentation. Because of the close juxtaposition and markedly different design, it is considered that this dwelling would not sit well with the proposed dwelling before members. And as such, if members are minded to recommend approval of the current application, a section 106 to prevent the dwelling on the northern plot being built out is considered necessary to the recommendation to approve. There are also extant permissions to develop the whole of the site for one large dwelling, which are material considerations. This slide shows one of those approved single large dwellings. This next slide shows another. There is also an extant approval for a dwelling at the rear of the site. However, the siting and design and scale of this dwelling are considered to be compatible with the current proposal if it's ever built out. This shows the site plan for that dwelling to the rear. The current proposal would be approximately sitting about there. The current proposal is considered to sit well in the street scene and to have an acceptable impact on neighbour amenity. Subject to the conditions set out in the report and an agreement to a section 106 to prevent the approved dwelling to the north of the site being built out, the proposal is recommended for approval. Should the applicant fail to complete this section 106 within stated timescales, the application would be refused as being incompatible with the approved dwelling. By way of an update to the stated conditions and informative notes in the committee report, in consideration of the comment received from DCC Rights of Way after the committee report was published, an informative would be added to the permission if granted, advising the applicant that throughout the duration of the development, the full width of the bridleway must remain open and available to the public. With regard to a restrictive covenant which affects the site and is a matter that has been raised by the Town Council, legal advice is that this is not a planning matter. The Town Council have also raised concerns about the large number of applications that the site has been subject to. In this regard, the legal advice is that provided each application is materially different to previous submissions, the Council is obliged to consider further applications. That concludes my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm now going to go to Chelsea Gollage to read out the public representations. Morning, Chelsea.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. The representation we've received is from Nicola Gray on behalf of Corfmullen Town Council. Corfmullen Town Council should like to make the following statement in respect of the above application. Having considered the application for this property, which has seen some 20+ applications being presented to this council over the last 10 years, all of which have been objected to for substantial and valid reasons. The Town Council is somewhat frustrated by the amount of time wasting which these continued applications cause, and should like to request the Planning Authority considers the value of continued applications and the impact they have. The Town Council recognised the court case which took place in March 2020 in respect of the restrictive covenant, which found the owner of Smuggler's Hide, 47 Brook Lane, as having an apparent desire to maximise, sometimes incrementally, the application's land development potential, and having erected a sign at the rear of 155 Hillside Road, stating that 3 houses were going to be built on the application land, along with having a fanciful description of Smuggler's Hide as a 5-bedroom property. A description which was designed to make it look more similar to his proposed properties than was actually the case, indicates the owner is attempting to force a decision in his favour. Although the Town Council was not putting forward the statement in relation to any covenant, the facts and outcome of the case which dealt with the covenant does provide a number of legitimate material matters which can form fundamental objections to the application. Further to the information above, the Town Council has the following objections. The application is contrary to MPPF 110B in that the proposed development does not provide safe and suitable access to the site for all users. Access to site is dangerous as Brook Lane is a single track, unadopted gravel lane, which will not cope with additional traffic. The proposed development would have an overbearing effect, which will result in a detrimental impact to the amenity currently enjoyed by neighbouring properties. Potential severing of the plot would result in high density housing for the remainder of the plot, contrary to policy LN2. The size of the proposed dwelling is overlarge for the severed plot and is unsympathetic to the more spacious character and appearance of existing development in the unmade part of Brook Lane. This will result in a cramped development which is out of character with the immediate area of Brook Lane and is therefore contrary to Christchurch and East Dorset Local Plan Policy HE2. It is noted that the street scene provided as part of this application is totally misrepresentative, particularly in relation to the size of existing adjacent dwellings. Members request the application is considered by the Planning Committee if the officer's comments are at variance to the above. That's the only comment we've received on this application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. I'm going to go back to the planning officers now. Are there any points you wish to make in relation to the Town Council deputation?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. All the items covered mentioned in the Town Council presentation were covered in my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move on to members now, and my first speaker is Vice Chairman Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have two points of clarification or clarity. One is the lane that's mentioned and the access to the properties. How many properties does that lane service? And the other one is that, as I understand it, that there has to be a legal, if we were to pass this and grant this application today, there has to be a legal signed agreement that the other section of the land wouldn't be developed. And if that legal agreement isn't forthcoming, then this application would be refused.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor. The section 106 would only refer to an approved dwelling to the north of the site. It's not intended that it would necessarily prevent future development of the northern part of that site, but that particular dwelling that has approval would not sit well with the dwelling that's currently before members. With regard to your question about the how many dwellings are served by Brook Lane, the road is actually a through lane. Which continues up to a metalled section, which goes through to a larger housing estate. And off that section of the lane, there are I would estimate about 30 dwellings. But as I say, that the road, although not used as a through road because of the poor construction of the unmetalled end to the south, it potentially could be used as a through route.
So can I come back, Madam Chairman? Okay, so the officer's opinion is that there isn't a great deal of traffic on that road, traffic movement on that road?
That's correct. Currently, not so much, no.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, if I may, can I add to what Kevin has said, with
yes,
your
of course.
agreement? Thank you. I'd just like to remind members that the fire damaged property clearly was previously there and was served from that access. So with the dwelling to the north, Section 106 agreement to preclude that particular design being built, then what we're talking about here is effectively one dwelling, bearing in mind there was an existing dwelling on the site prior to this. Thank you.
So in essence, no accumulation of traffic, or intensification perhaps is a better word.
Obviously you have the plot at the back, but that's not being built out. So at the moment we've got the potential for 3, but it would be a net gain of 2 should they come forward. But the covenant's been mentioned. It is all very complex, but here I just wanted to remind members that there was an existing dwelling on the site, so that will obviously, you need to add that into the mix when you look at net additional traffic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shane, do you have anything else, or shall I move on to the next speaker?
No, happy to move on, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. My next speaker is David Took.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am questioning the weight that's been attached to policy LN2 and policy HE2. both of which are part of our current local plan. It was stated in the presentation that the density of development was considered for this site to be acceptable, and I'd just like to explore that a little bit and find out what's meant by that. So considered presumably by the officers making up the report, but what is it about this site that means it's even though it's contrary to policy LN2, if it is contrary, that doesn't matter? Can I just have a little bit of an explanation of that, please?
Yes, certainly, Councillor. Policy LN2 sets out that the council would like to see sites developed at a density of 30 dwellings per hectare, but it also provides that in situations where such a relatively high density of housing would be inappropriate, that a lower density can be acceptable. The Smugglers High plot is quite a large site, and the density of development is considerably lower than 30 dwellings per hectare. But in this sort of semi-rural setting, a lower density of development is considered to be appropriate to the character of the street. And I note the objection from the town council is that the development would be too high a density. So in the context of policy LN2, which provides that the sites can be developed at 30 dwellings per hectare, the current proposal is far below that. But in the context of the street scene and area, we consider that would be appropriate to the setting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, did you have any other comments, Councillor Took?
No, I think that was the one that concerned me mostly, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shane Bartley, you've asked to come back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, and I just want to congratulate the officer on the report and on the excellent presentation, and reading through his conclusions, which I'm in agreement with, and going through the recommendations. The recommendation is quite a complicated one, as has already been said, due to this a legal agreement that's pending as well. But I would move that I would propose that we support the application that's before us as laid out in the officer's report, subject to those conditions and to what is laid out in that recommendation, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. That's Barry Gorringe. Robin Cook, you've asked to speak. Robin, do you still wish to speak?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Yeah. No, I was going to second, but Barry beat me to it, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. I shall move on to Alex Brenton then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at these designs, they seem, I mean, I can accept that it's low density. I accept that this is already a built road, even though it's an unmade road. There are other properties. I just don't have any indication. This design looks very suburban to me. It doesn't desperately look appropriate for the sort of rural edge of the village. I suppose that we've had lots of other applications for this site. Are we just going towards a sort of fairly standard design here?
If I can just come back on that question, please, Councillor. The design is relatively unremarkable and fairly suburban in its character and style. I quite agree, but the two dwellings to the southwest, Kimberley and Kestor, are both quite similar in their design appearance. So viewed together as a group, the dwellings would sit quite well together.
Can I come back with another question?
Of course.
Which is, have we, I know we can only look at what's been presented, but are there any indications that this property is built to, you know, slightly help with the carbon footprint and climate change mitigation? Are there, you know, eco-friendly measures in the property, or is it just another suburban house? I mean, have they got an air source heat pump designed, or are we not at that stage of the planning?
There are no particular features of this design that acknowledge our climate change concerns, but the application site is within an urban area where the location is considered to be sustainable, and where the council supports the erection of new dwellings. Assurance of its compliance with criteria such as adequate insulation to meet modern standards would be assured by building regulations.
Thank you.
Okay. I think where we are, Alex, is until we get our new local plan, we can't put in more green policies. We have to go with what there is. However, I think I'm right in picking up that all new properties being built from next year onwards will have to have electric vehicle charging points. So surely that will become through as part of building regs. Can I have some clarification from officers on that?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, it's Mike Garrity here, Madam Chairman. That would be my understanding of how it would work. So if it becomes a requirement, a prerequisite, then it would be building regulation standards that would set that out as a requirement. If it comes into planning as far as that's concerned, then we can obviously pick that up as and when the legislation bites. In the meantime, I think just to pick up on the point you've made, we have to determine applications on the basis of what's before us at the time being, and when we get our new local plan, then there will be an opportunity to look at whether or not we can push those boundaries a little bit further. But yes, for the time being, I think that's how we're going to have to operate. Thank you.
That's lovely, thank you. Hence the fact we've got quite a punishing timescale to get the new plan in place. Okay.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I have no further speakers. We have a recommendation to grant, which has been duly seconded. Can we just have the recommendation up on screen, please, so that everybody can see it? Otherwise, it's quite long. I don't really want to read it all out. So you can all see part A, and if you can just go down a little bit more, and that is part B if we obviously don't get the agreement. So, okay, you can stop scrolling, thank you. I'm now going to move to the vote, and I will do it through the roll call. So, Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've attended the officer's presentation, and I've taken part in the debate, and I'm minded to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. We have apologies from Mike Barron. Alex Brenton.
I have listened to the officer's report, I've read the report, and I vote against.
Okay, thank you. Robin Cook.
I've seen the full presentation and I'm minded to support the recommendation.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
I've been present throughout, heard the presentations, and I vote to approve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Barry Gorringe.
I'm present during the presentation and the debate and in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. David Morgan.
I've been present during the debate and the officer's report, and I am minded to vote for the proposal.
Thank you. We have apologies from Julie Robertson. I'll move on to David Took.
Thank you. I've been present throughout. I've taken part in the debate, listened to the presentation, and read the report, and I am minded to support the proposal.
Thank you. I've had an email coming from Bill Trite saying that he's still unable to connect, so is sending his apologies, and we have also apologies from John Worth. So, David, can I come to you, please, for the outcome of the vote, please?
Yes, Chairman. It's 6 for and 1 against.
Okay, so that is a minded decision to grant this application. I will now move to Mike Garrity, Head of Planning, to take the delegated decision, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that I've listened to the officer presentation, heard the debate, and that the application will be determined in line with the committee's minded to decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the benefit of the public, this application will be granted under delegated powers. So if we then move on to our next application, and that is item 5, and that is 6/2020/0560 to convert and extend an existing barn into 4 two-bedroom residential units with parking and the reuse of the existing access at Spyware Orchard Barn, Durnford Drove, Langton Matravers. And that is on pages 47 to 52 of your agenda. And Elizabeth Adams is the case officer, so she will be doing the presentation this morning. Morning, Liz.
Good morning, Councillor Coombs. Thank you.
And yes, we can see your presentation.
Thank you for confirming. So, as Councillor Coombs just said, Spyware Orchard Barn is the site, and the proposal is to convert the barn into 4 two-bedroom dwellings. The nominated officer has identified this application to come before you in the light of the concerns raised by a ward member and the parish council about the appropriateness of the proposal. 3 objections were received by local residents raising the issues of flooding, impacts on the area of outstanding natural beauty, the scale, design and highway safety. This site is located south of Langton Matravers, and the purple here demarcates the settlement boundary, and the site lies approximately 70-80 metres to the south of the settlement on elevated land. This whole area is designated as part of Dorset AONB, and the intervening land here you may recognise is Spyware Orchard, where 28 dwellings were approved in June 2020 and are currently under construction. To the south of the site lies Langton House. This is a complex of apartments and holiday cottages, and beyond this is the National Trust car park from which you can access Dancing Ledge. So here we see the proposal of the barn in the context of the extant approval for the housing exception site at Spyware Orchard. And this aerial view, obviously taken before work started, shows the trees that line along Durnford Drove and also along the northern boundary of Langton House in here. Now, these photographs were taken during winter months before work had started on the adjoining development site, and you can see here that the land on which the barn is situated is elevated, but it's nestled into the southwest corner with trees providing some screening to the north and the west, even in the winter months. I should say the south, sorry, south and east. Okay, so here this photo is looking south past the access to the barn, with the entrance to Langton House beyond. So that's the entrance in, there's the barn there behind the trees. And this photo here is showing the barn obviously from Spyware Orchard itself, where the development is being undertaken. This again is the approved layout of the development of the adjoining field, and also a section showing the dwellings and the barn. When the inspector considered the outline application for Spyware Orchard, he noted that the proposed development would involve some erosion of the rural nature of Durnford Drove, but only for a reasonably short stretch. And he noted that the buildings were related to Langton House and the barn, which is the subject of this application, and these were readily visible so the vista did not lack a built presence. And taking into account the relationship with the existing settlement, he concluded that there would be some localised effect on the AONB, but he ultimately concluded this was outweighed by the benefits of housing supply, which included 22 affordable dwellings. So the proposal for the barn conversion would further alter the rural context, but now it has to be considered in the light of this new development and development to the south. So the impact is considered by officers to be modest. Here we see the southern elevation of the barn and views from Langton House, so looking across now towards the barn with the existing horse, chestnut and ash trees. So the proposal is to enlarge and convert the barn to create 4 two-bedroom dwellings served by modest gardens and 6 parking spaces in the front here. The AONB officer did note that the dwellings may be best suited to provide holiday accommodation because they're quite modest, but the size of the properties does accord with national technical housing standards for 2-storey, 3-person dwellings, as they have a floor area of approximately 74 square metres compared to 70 square metres required by the national standards. And Unit 3 is just slightly bigger. Policies restricting the occupation of dwellings in the emerging local plan cannot yet be given weight, and the proposal is for dwellings which would contribute to housing delivery in the area. So the failure of the Purbeck area to meet the housing delivery test has got implications for this proposal. Usually in the countryside, we would need to consider policy CO, and that discourages development outside of settlements. Now, of course, there are exceptions within policy CO, which includes the reuse of rural buildings, which this is, and also proportionate extensions which don't detract from the building's character. However, taking that aside, as policy CO is a housing policy, it together with policy LD, which is the general location of development policy, are deemed to be out of date in the light of the under-delivery in accordance with the NPPF paragraph 11. It's therefore necessary to consider whether the proposal accords with other relevant policies, with areas protected by the NPPF, and whether there are any adverse impacts that outweigh the benefits. Concerns have been raised by the parish and by third parties about the visual impact of the proposed works to the barn. The proposal will replace the existing shallow pitched roof with a higher pitched and part flat roof with projecting front eaves and this gable feature. The increase in the size of the building will be most evident on the side elevations, but the roof bulk will be mitigated to some extent by the pitch of the roof, the recessive colour of natural slate proposed, and by the vegetation screening offered by the surrounding trees. At the rear, which you saw in a photo just now, the eaves height will be unchanged and the roof above will slope away from the north boundary. As has been explained in the officer report, it's your officer's view that the proposal can be accommodated on the site whilst conserving the natural beauty of the AONB. So the increase in the roof height can be achieved without an incongruous appearance. There are a variety of property forms in the locality, so this proposal would not depart from any particular local vernacular. Natural slate is proposed on the pitched elements with Purbeck stone plinth and front gables and natural cedar cladding on above, and white painted timber windows and doors. And this would be by doorways on the side elevations. And conservation roof lights are intended to serve the bedrooms. The barn is elevated, as we've seen, but from the north, the separation from properties in Spyware Orchard will avoid any overbearing impact. The height difference will be more evident from within the new development, but again, we've got separation distances, very generous separation distances, and intervening vegetation will also assist with the assimilation of the proposal in its context. The Spyware Orchard housing development, which you see here, included, I'm sorry about the detail, don't worry about that, but included a screen of new native planting along the southern boundary, and consideration's been given as to whether this could or should be extended into the application site, but it's not been judged to be necessary to make the proposal acceptable due to the pre-existing built form and pre-existing trees which provide screening. There is a small area in the southern corner where some planting could be accommodated, and that's proposed to be secured by condition 6. Your arboricultural officer has checked and is satisfied that the proposal is compatible with the existing trees within and beyond the site, and this is subject to proposed conditions for tree protection number 7 and hard surfacing details number 6. So 6 parking spaces are proposed to serve the dwellings, and this is in accordance with the residential parking guidance for allocated spaces. Additional visitor spaces would be preferable, but there is the potential for informal agreements to be reached between future occupiers for visitor parking. In relation to flooding, the site is in flood zone 1, but there is potential for surface water flooding in nearby, so it's known in the vicinity. So condition 3 is proposed to secure details of surface and foul drainage prior to commencement, and it's anticipated that the surface water drainage would be in a similar manner to that at Spyware Orchard development, which has used deep borehole soakaways. Since the report went to publication, the Dorset Natural Environment Team certification has been received by the applicant, so it's recommended that tweaks be made to condition 4 in your agenda, just so we can refer to the fact that the biodiversity plan has been approved by the Dorset Environment Team. So the plan includes precautionary action to avoid harm to protected species, and it secures enhancements including bat boxes and ridge access tiles, bird boxes and insect features. Concerns have been raised by third parties and the parish about additional traffic using the track beyond the formalised section of Durnford Drove. So this is a tarmacked right-of-way that that leads up to the site. So the rights of way team have not raised any objection, but they have asked that an informative note be added to remind the developer of the need to maintain the surface during the development and into the future. The existing wall that you see along here, and obviously the verge planting, does not offer opportunities for passing space along this single width lane, but there is space for vehicles to pass at the end of the metalled road. So here where you see in this picture, and also further up just beyond the site access. The highways team have taken into account the width of the lane and the presence of the ditch, which has been raised as a concern by some parties, but note that the site is already used for agricultural purposes, so we would anticipate that agricultural vehicles would be using the site, and do not consider therefore that the proposed alternative residential use would result in material harm to the transport network or highway safety. This is one additional condition that was not included on your addenda. In the light of the limited width of the access and its use as a right-of-way, it's proposed that an additional condition could be added to secure construction traffic management plan. The principle has been agreed by the applicant. So in summary, the proposal will reuse and expand an existing building to provide 4 modest dwellings with social and economic benefits. Subject to conditions, the proposal is not considered harmful to the AONB, Dorset Heath and protected sites or local flood risk. No harm has been identified that would outweigh the benefits of housing provision, which would contribute to housing delivery. So the officer recommendation is that members be reminded to approve the scheme subject to conditions as set out in section 17 of the committee report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Liz. Very clear presentation. If I can now move on to Chelsea Goddard for the public representations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The comment we have is from Dr. Mary Sparks on behalf of Langton-Matravers Parish Council. Langton-Matravers Parish Council objects to this proposal on the following grounds. Policy CO countryside does not apply in this case. The National Plan and Policy Framework is explicit in that the policy affecting the conversion of existing farm buildings does not apply in AONB's, SSSI's and heritage sites, e.g. the Jurassic Coast. In this case, all of the above apply. See Identified Constraints in PAP 2020-0007. Any grant of plan permission on the basis would be invalid and could result in judicial review. In the alternative, Policy CO requires that any development in the countryside should make a positive contribution to landscape character and enhance biodiversity. This development neither makes the positive contributions nor the enhancements required. Indeed, it detracts from both. See further objections below. The NPPF does not permit development in the countryside if the development would result in the external dimensions extending beyond dimensions of the existing building. As the dimensions of the proposed building do exceed the existing building, then again the development is not permitted under the NPPF. Rule or exception site. As CO does not apply and is a development outside the settlement boundary, then RES does apply. The application fails to provide affordable housing as required by the RES policy. Adverse impact on nature conservation and biodiversity, including the effect on trees. The site currently has a rich and diverse ecology. The Biodiversity Appraisal, which appears to have been undertaken by someone other than a qualified ecologist, only and inadequately addresses matters relating to bats. Such an appraisal needs to be undertaken by a suitably qualified person who should address all aspects of biodiversity so as to ensure there is no negative impact. Layout and visual appearance. This development, alongside the already approved Spyware Orchard development, is an overdevelopment having a negative impact on the surrounding countryside in AO and B. The proposed design is not in keeping with the existing Langton Matravers vernacular style, nor is it in keeping with the neighbouring Spyware Orchard development. Emerging policies, environmental and climate change. The proposed design is not in line with Dorset's emerging policies on the environment and the climate change emergency. That's all the comments we've received for this application. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. Liz, I'm going to come back to you, please, because there's one or two challenges in that representation, and I think they deserve a response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As explained in the officer report, I think there's been a little bit of confusion about what the NPPF does and doesn't allow in the countryside. So there is when you want to convert a barn, you have the opportunity to do so under prior approval through the permitted development legislation, or you can apply for planning permission. Under permitted development, there is indeed a limitation, which means that you can't convert a barn within the A1B under that prior approval process. So in this case, an application has been made, and another limitation is you can't exceed the size. So the parish council are correct that the developer would not be able to benefit by the permitted development route. So that's why they have submitted a planning application and why it has been considered by your officers and is before you today. And we have had to consider it against the policies of the local plan, but some of these are out of date in the light of the housing delivery issue. So that hopefully explains why we then say, okay, is there any harm to protected areas, the AONB, the heathlands, flooding risk, and if there is, do they justify refusal? And then secondly, we say, are there any other elements of harm that would outweigh the benefits? And in this case, it's your officer's view that there is no significant harm to any protected areas, nor justification for refusing the proposal, which will contribute to housing delivery. So I hope that explains those points. Mention was made of affordable housing. This is an application for only 4 dwellings, using an existing built form, which is to be extended. So in the light of the limited size of the proposal plan, we don't have the opportunity to request affordable housing. Please could you remind me if there's any other issues I've missed, Chair?
I think you've covered most of the bases, but I'm sure members will pick anything else up during the debate. My first speaker is Alex Brenton.
Where are we? Thank you, Chair. Sorry about the background, it doesn't seem to want to change. I know this barn fairly well. I know this area, and I have to admit, when the previous application for Spyware Orchard came in, I did wonder why this barn wasn't included, but I assumed it was a different ownership. I personally think that the design that we have been shown is better than the very sort of boring barn that was there to start with. So I think in sort of architectural styles, this is an improvement. But I do have issues, and I'm not convinced completely, on the issue of water runoff, because I have seen water gushing down that lane. it is a fairly impermeable top level of soil. And have we got any proof yet that these deep boreholes, soakaways, which were proposed for the Spyware barn, are actually working? We have had some extreme weather things happening in the last year, and so I would have thought it would have been fairly clear by now whether water did gush off down Durnford Drove or it did actually find its way to the attenuation ponds. So I would like some reassurance about water collection. I don't see on the plan indications of rainwater butts or rainwater harvesting, which actually for holiday cottages would be quite useful. Are there any tanks for rainwater harvesting and reuse of grey water? That concerns me. But there isn't a vast area of land to sort of do ponds on site, but there is sufficient space to do, you know, some mitigation. I remember in the other side of the road when we did the malt house reorganisation, they were putting rain gardens in. I didn't see anything on the plan that said that. So that is one concern. Again, I am going to bang on about, we've got a south-facing roof space there. Are there going to be solar panels on it? Bearing in, I know you'll say, oh, well, it's in a AONB, you can't have that, but they would be high enough that it wouldn't actually attract reflections. I'm also slightly concerned about the trees around the site. I know a lot of them aren't particularly exciting trees. Some of them are a bit of scraggy saplings, and naturally in any sort of building work there does tend to be more casualties on the tree side than one would hope, even if it's just because of clearing overhanging branches. My other point was a question about we have roof lights there, fine, in the upper story. Are they shielded or blinded, or will they be, because we are in an area which prides itself on dark skies? So I just wonder whether that's been picked up in the conditions. I didn't see it on the last lot of conditions. I saw bees, birds and bats, but I didn't see light pollution, and I am concerned about the rainwater runoff and, you know, conservation of the rainwater there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. There's quite a few elements there for you, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of runoff, the land is currently compacted gravel, the majority of it, and so any works that are undertaken in relation to the conversion gives the opportunity to provide some improvement. Although the sort of statutory requirement is that new development should just not make flooding risk any worse. You know, it should be able to deal with any additional runoff. But I think, as I've said, there is opportunity for improvement here, and initial details were looked at by the council's engineers, and they considered that there were opportunities for sustainable urban drainage system. So that's why I've suggested condition 3 in order to obtain more detailed information prior to commencement. So obviously there's a lot of background work to be done with the drainage. In terms of whether the drainage scheme is working on the Spyware site, I'm not aware of how far along the development they are with their drainage scheme, but I know that that has all been fully assessed and checked by the flood risk management team. So this is obviously a much smaller site than the Spyware Orchard Greenfield site, and also the Greenfield site was previously undeveloped, so had infiltration potential, which is going to be much more affected by the new build than in this case, where it's currently hard surfaced, and we will potentially get some improvements. I do pick up the opportunities for collecting grey water, and I think that is something that the developer would be wise to consider, but it's not something that we could insist upon if they have alternative sustainable options. So we'll need to wait and see what comes in with the condition discharge. In terms of solar panels, I think it's a similar response to the one that Kevin gave, that we can't insist on it. I haven't checked to see what the size of that roof plane is in terms of what could be achieved, and that would be a matter for any future owner to decide if they want to install those. Trees, as I said, our tree officer is satisfied that the works can be undertaken without damage to trees. And in terms of roof lights, it wasn't a matter that was raised by the AONB office in particular. It is something where often we will put an informative note on to say, please be advised that you are in an area where dark night skies are valuable. Please use shutters and blinds on your roof lights. It's not a situation where I'd anticipated requesting sort of automatic blinds, but members might consider that is a condition that is necessary. I hope that helps.
Alex, I think most of your points have been clarified. However, that last one about the roof lights, is that something you wish to take forward?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would really. I think we need to start, particularly, because it is the coastal belt and we are creeping up towards the coast ridge, the height. I think we should definitely make an effort to put that in as an advisory or as a condition or whatever. I seem to remember we have done in the past in Worth Matravers and places like that, where the dark night skies are valued by sky watchers. I don't know how you word it. That's sort of not, I don't know how you get around that one, but I am sure that our planning officers have a sentence they could slide in, even if it's just advice. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. David Took, you're my next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to agree with Councillor Brenton about the dark skies and the need to protect those. There's a little circle that needs squaring, which is paragraph 15.3 talks about policy CO, and it says, amongst other things, conversion to housing may also be permitted, provided it would lead to an enhancement of the immediate setting. The setting is considered later on in the report, and paragraph 5.14 gives the overall result, and it says it will not detract from the character or setting of the original building, although it would be difficult to identify any significant enhancement as requested by policy CO.
Sorry, David, can you confirm whereabouts in the agenda you're referring to, please?
On the officer's report, paragraph 15.3 and 15.14.
15.3, sorry. So
the policy says that it must result in an improvement. 15.14 accepts that it's not going to do that. And I'm just trying to square how those two things result in the recommendation to grant. Thank you.
Okay, I'll get this to clarify, please.
Thank you. So were we in normal circumstances where the council had been able to demonstrate housing delivery, then we would be looking, are all the requirements of policy CO met? Is there an enhancement? If there isn't, we would look to refuse. However, we're not in normal circumstances. Unfortunately, our housing delivery is below, it's about 75%, isn't it? So we have been instructed by the government basically that our housing delivery policies are out of date. So whilst considered policy CO within the report, the weight that we can give to that is now limited. Well, it's basically, we have to look at paragraph 11 of the MPPF now, because paragraph 11 says if your housing policies are out of date, then you have to consider are there any impacts on protected areas, and is there any other harm that would justify refusal? So even though the proposal might not tick the box in terms of enhancement for policy CO, it doesn't cause harm in order to justify refusal.
Okay.
We've lost your audio feed, Liz, and it looks as though your feed is frozen.
Members, if I can come in and just read from paragraph 11, if I would assist, Chairman. So paragraph 11 talks about plans and decisions should apply a presumption in favour of sustainable development. And it says for decision making, this means that you should approve development proposals that accord with up-to-date development plans without delay, or where there are no development plan policies or the policies which are out of date. You should grant permission unless there are any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework as a whole. And that I'm just going back to the paragraph where it talks about housing provision. It says just going to find the bit. Yes, the paragraph kicks in where you've got, do you remember we talked to you before about the different thresholds? So you've got the local authority needed to have at least a 3 housing supply of deliverable housing sites and meet the buffers. In this instance, we haven't got that, and therefore you have got to consider it against the policies in the NPPF. So paragraph 11 kicks in. You can't rely on all your local plan policies, and therefore you have to identify harm in order to outweigh the presumption in favour of sustainable development. In this instance, it's your officer's view that that hasn't occurred. Thank you.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chairman, thank you very much indeed for that explanation. I understand it.
Doesn't mean you have to like it.
Housing delivery is not within the gift of the council, it's within the gift of developers. And the fact that developers can then not deliver and then get planning permission through the back door, as it were, it sits very badly with me, but I accept that's the way it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the rules that the government have set, and that's what we have to follow. Okay, was there anything else, or can I move on to the next speaker?
No, please move on. I support Councillor Bretton's dark skies proposals, and I think we should condition that. Thank you.
Thank you. My next speaker is Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just going to briefly return. I've got two questions. The first one is returning back to the housing delivery numbers, and we've fallen below the 74%, I think, now in Purbeck, and I think it's not just developers. I think Purbeck has got a history of refusing applications, which I think to a large extent has put us in the position we're in. And could I just have a clarification from officers that the further this becomes a problem, then as a planning committee, we start to struggle to guide the development that's going to be in Purbeck, because there's the presumption to develop, and it becomes more difficult for us to have an impact on it. Is that my understanding of that?
Kim, can I ask you to respond, as Liz is still having difficulties coming back into the meeting?
Sorry, I was just trying to call her. Yes, obviously we have to consider each development that comes before us on its own merits. It does leave us into a position of some difficulty because that presumption is there. So unless we can identify harm, then you are looking to, with each development proposal, you are looking to apply that test. And it, it's the same situation that councils are facing across the country, and that's why these sanctions are put there, it's important not only that you as a council allocate sufficient housing, but that it's built out. The second one is obviously, as you say, a bit more challenging for us. But it's and just to draw members' attention, when I was reading it out earlier, because I was expecting Liz to answer the question, I opened the NPPF, and it's on page 6, footnote 8 of paragraph 11, where it's set out about the 5-year housing land supply and the housing delivery test. So just to focus members' attention on that footnote moving forward. Clearly, where we can safeguard, we will, but we do need to look at each application on its own merits. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I come back, Madam Chairman?
Of course.
Thank you. So I've got another question for officers, and it's to do with whether we can put another condition in, or slightly alter a condition. It's put another condition in, actually, and that's in the car parking. I appreciate we've lost the officer through a technical problem, but in one of the slides it showed the car parking arrangements for the site, which only had 6 car parking spaces for the 4 properties that are going to be within the conversion of the barn. And I wondered whether we could put a condition in to say that it would be 8 spaces rather than 6. It would be 2 per property. There seems to be sufficient room, sufficient land in order to bring that about within the curtilage of the property. And also, because of its rural location and present, we have limited public transport accessibility within that area. I think it would be more of a common sense approach to provide 2 spaces per property. I wonder if that was possible to put that in as a condition.
Clearly, the parking provision, the Highway Authority have looked at it and they've got no objection to the layout. There's sufficient room within the area for additional parking. Given the rural location, that sort of informal arrangement could work. We could ask for them to demonstrate that they could accommodate it, but we would need to ask the developer to satisfy. So in that instance, I would ask you to delegate that to officers to have that discussion, because in terms of the trees and other things within that area, we'd need to be satisfied that the layout would work in operational terms. I'm satisfied that informally you could park 8 and that the 4 units could manage the parking to satisfy that requirement, but we would need to explore that with the developer to see whether or not a formalised layout would work.
With your permission, Madam Chairman, I'd like that to be done.
Okay. On a procedural note, Kim, can you just confirm, does that mean we would need to defer this item, or is that something that could be done once we've made a minded to decision?
I think that given the fact that you could accommodate that number of vehicles there, that if members were happy that it satisfies the provision, we could, as officers, we could, if you were minded to grant it and you delegate that aspect to us with the addition of a condition to secure the parking. Yeah. Okay. So you could do it minded to grant it subject to a condition that details of the precise parking layout would be submitted for agreement. Then we could cover that by condition.
Okay, because I wouldn't want to see an application fall on just the parking issue.
But just bearing in mind that if you can't get the manoeuvrability, it might rely on an informal arrangement for 8. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to my next speaker now, and that's Mike Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I take it that the previous speaker proposed grant, or is that still in abeyance?
It's still up for discussion.
Okay. I'd like to hear further discussion, but on what I've seen so far, I'm willing to propose grant. Can I just say, though, if that eventually gets a seconder, I'd like to see auto blinds as a condition rather than an advisory, because I think it's time that we embrace a dark skies policy and didn't leave it to the applicants to choose whether they supported it or not. And can I just say, in the report, I'm sure there wasn't any pun intended, but on the first sentence of the report, I think it mentions exiting barn rather than existing barn. I'm sure that wasn't intended as a pun, and both are right. So that's all I'll say and leave it there for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I just confirm then, Mike, as proposer, that you are proposing grant as per the printed recommendation with the following extras? An extra, an amendment to condition 4 about the diversity plan being agreed. The extra condition proposed by officers of the construction management plan. Welcome back, Liz. An extra condition about screening the roof lights, and then an extra condition which is delegated to officers to try and secure 2 additional car parking spaces.
Yes, all of those, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shane Bartley, you wanted to come back. Do you wish to second?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I wish to second, and for the following reasons. The barn is not an attractive building, and the proposed development is far more pleasing to the eye and would sit alongside an already approved development. This development, this application is heavily screened by trees, so it doesn't have a great impact on the local landscape, in my opinion. And Purbeck have failed to meet their housing quota. And under the NPPF policies, it says on the conclusion at 16.0 in the report that there are no clear reasons for refusal of the application. And I also note under the consultees that Natural England have no objection. Also AONB have no objection, but have made some suggestions. Conservation have no objection. Tree officer has no objection. Highways no objection, and drainage no objection. Although I do have an issue about building controlling drainage on planning applications, because I'd rather that was sort of we had more of a say in that. But I appreciate planning law is what it is. So on the basis of that, Madam Chairman, I'm happy to second the proposal as has been discussed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no further speakers, so I shall move to the vote. And just to reiterate, the recommendation is to grant as per the agenda, with an amendment to condition 4 about the diversity plan being agreed. Sorry, biodiversity, with an extra condition proposed by officers of a construction management plan, and then extra conditions proposed by members of screening of the roof lights, and also delegation to officers to secure additional parking on the site. So duly proposed and seconded. I shall now go through the roll call. Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've heard the officer's presentation. I've taken part fully in the debate, and I'm minded to approve.
Thank you. Mike Barron has sent his apologies. Alex Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. I've taken part in the discussion. I've listened to the arguments and the report, and I propose voting in favour. Yeah, I agree to vote in favour.
Thank you. Robin Cook. Robin Cook, are you with us?
Dave North over here. No indication that Councillor Cook isn't with us. Maybe we'll come back.
Okay, I'll come back to. We'll go through the rest of the list. Mike Dyer.
Present throughout, heard the presentation and taken part in the discussion and vote to approve.
Okay, thank you. I've just seen Robin Cook's video feed. So Robin, are you with us? I have no audio from you.
Councillor Cook doesn't appear to be muted. Maybe in the chat bar he could give some indication.
Robin, if you can hear me, can I have a thumbs up?
Madam Chairman, if he removes the headset, it might improve.
Let's try plan B.
Yes.
Oh, that works.
Try plan B. Oh dear, now you're all in the room, but there's something wrong with the headset this morning, Chairman. I think it's playing up. It isn't the user,
That's
it is the
okay.
headset. So apologies for that.
No worries.
Anyway, back to where we were. Thank you. Yes, I have followed the full presentation, listened to the debate, and I'm minded to support the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, my next person I'm coming to is Barry Gorringe.
Thank you, Chairman. I was present during the debate and the presentation, and I'm in favour of the recommendation with the conditions and amendments.
Okay, thank you. David Morgan.
I've listened to the debate and I vote in favour of the proposal.
Thank you. Julie Robinson, we have apologies. David Took.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been present throughout. I've listened to and taken part in the debate, and I've, with the addition of the conditions, I vote to approve.
Thank you. Bill Trite and John Worth have given their apologies. So, David Northover, I believe it's unanimous. If you can confirm, please.
It is unanimous, Chairman. 7 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. In that case, the Planning Committee's decision is a minded to approve. So I will now go to Mike Garrity, Head of Planning, to make the delegated decision.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Can indeed.
Great, thank you. Yes, I confirm I have listened to the officer presentation, heard the debate, and that this application will be determined in line with the committee's minded to decision, including the additional conditions that were specified. Thank you.
Lovely. So for the benefit of the public, the application will be granted under delegated powers. Thank you all very much on that one. So our final item this morning is item 6, and that is 321-1259 TTPO. T1 oak, reduce the canopy to the previous pruning points CA 1.5 to 2 meters in all directions, remove epicormic growth, remove deadwood, T2 oak, pollard the tree by reducing the height by CA 4 to 5 meters and the size by 2 to 3 meters, remove the lowest lateral growing into T1 at 23 Beaufoys Avenue, Ferndown, and that's pages 47 to 52. And I'm delighted to introduce Michael Douglas as the tree officer on this one. Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
And can you see my presentation?
Yes, if you can put it into presentation mode, that'd be fantastic.
I shall try and do that for you. Forgive me. No, that's not going to do it. Forgive me, I'm not familiar with this, so is that better?
No.
Andrew, you might want to just click slideshow from beginning. Would that work?
How's that?
That's the trick.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, it's Andrew Douglas, not Michael Douglas. I'm not very good at acting, I'm afraid, Madam Chairman. Hello?
Did I say Michael?
Yes, you did.
Oh,
yes.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I've
it's
got it
all
written down as Andrew.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. Madam Chairman, no, that's fine. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, this item is brought to you because the applicant is a member of the eastern section of Dorset Council's tree team, and that is the only reason that it is being brought to council. The application, as was introduced by the chairman, is to reduce the canopies of 2 oak trees, one by up to 2 meters and the second one by up to 5 meters, as well as removing the lowest lateral branch. The trees are located in Ferndown, which hopefully you are all familiar with, but is to the north of Bournemouth and just to the west of Moors Valley Country Park. As you can see from the slide, the property is located just to the north of the main artery road, Wimborne Road West, which runs the length of Ferndown. Beaufort's Avenue in character is very well treed and has a number of tree preservation orders. The trees themselves are protected by a group designation along with a number of individual trees within the area. I think I've just no, there we go. Right, okay, so from the slides you can see tree 2, which is clearly marked, and tree 1. Just for your information, members, the oak tree T2 has previously, although it is now out of date, had permission to be removed. The reason being that, as you can see from the third photograph, the first photograph on the right hand side, the arrow points to a union in that tree, which was considered by the then tree officer and has been confirmed by both myself and my colleague, has an included bark union, which is a structural weakness in the tree, and for that reason the tree was given consent to be removed, although the applicant decided that that wasn't what they wanted to do, because it would have kept the it would have opened the house up too much to the road. The applicant has undertaken reduction works on tree 2 in the past, and the application is simply to re-reduce the tree back down to where it had been reduced previously. The second tree, or the first tree, T1, is a subdominant tree to tree 2, and the application there is to, sorry, I've pressed the wrong button, is to reduce the tree by up to 1.5 meters. As you will see from the central photograph, I have annotated the photographs just to give a rough indication of how much they are going to be reduced by. In addition to the reduction works, the oak tree T2 has the applicant has asked that the lower bough on the bottom of the tree, as circled in orange on the central photograph, is also removed as it is growing towards the house. We also don't raise any objection to that. I think that is the extent of my comments. If you have anything, please let me know.
Okay, we have no public speakers on this application. The officer report is to grant. Where am I? Shane Bartlett, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for the officer's report. And I do know that the only reason this has come to committee is for openness, honesty and transparency, due to the applicant being a employee of Dorset Council. And reading the officer's report from T1 and T2, it does seem very much a health and safety issue to a large extent, in terms of removing dead wood and some of the structural parts of the tree that your tree officers believe to be a risk area. I well remember when 2 oak trees come down in Westfield car park, which was obviously a risk to life, and those trees, the limbs that had come down, then enforced those trees to be removed completely. So I fully appreciate what important work this is, and I have no hesitation in, having read the report, to proposing to go with the recommendation in the officer's report, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Madam Chairman. Councillor Robin Cook.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, I have no speakers wishing to debate this one, so I shall move straight to the vote. It's been proposed and seconded as per the officer recommendation. So for the last time this morning, the roll call. Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've heard the officer's report and taken part in the debate, and I am minded to approve the recommendation, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mike Barron has given his apologies. Alex Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. I always concerned about these, but I do vote in favour to approve.
Thank you. Robin Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've followed the presentation in full and I'm minded to support.
Thank you. Mike Dyer.
Listen to the full report and minded to support.
Thank you. Barry Gorringe.
I've heard all the presentation and I'm in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. David Morgan.
I've heard the presentation and I'm minded to vote in favour.
Thank you. Julie Robinson has sent her apologies. David Took.
I've been here throughout, listened to the presentation, read the report, and I'm minded to approve the recommendation.
Thank you very much. And apologies from Bill Trite and John Worth. David Northover, can you confirm that the outcome of the vote is unanimous?
It is indeed, Chairman. 7 for, none against.
Okay, that's lovely. So the committee's minded to decision is to grant. I will now go to Mike Garrity as Head of Planning to make the delegated decision.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can confirm I have listened to the officer presentation, heard the debate and the discussion, and that this application will be determined in line with the committee's minded to decision. Thank you.
That's lovely, thank you. And again, for the benefit of the public, the delegated decision is to grant this application. So the final item on the agenda this morning is urgent business, and members of the committee would be pleased to hear that yet again there is no urgent business. So at 11:31, I thank everybody, both officers and members, and the clerks that represented their local parish and town councils for their contribution this morning, and close the meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Good night. Oh, good afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.